Hi everyone, Paul Hubib here. Welcome to Runversations One-on-One. Today we meet Bernard Akuoko, a runner who was born with retinitis pigmentosa. Bernard has not let this disability stop him from running and enjoying what he wants to do. It's an inspirational story and I hope you really enjoy it. Welcome to Runversations One-on-One. Morning, Bernard.
Good morning, Paul. How are you doing today?
Good, how are you?
Oh, not bad, not bad.
It's good to
Feeling
chat with
good.
you. Thanks for, joining us today on Runversations. I've been actually looking forward to talking with you today.
Oh, thank you. I'm pretty excited as well.
One of the things that we like to do is connect with runners in the community that have inspirational stories, that have overcome barriers to where they are now. And I've known you for a while, and I've seen some of the things that you've done with regards to running. So I thought, you know what, Bernard would be the best guest to have on and to talk about the different struggles that you've gone through. So thank you I really appreciate you being here.
Oh, I'm happy to be here for sure, for sure.
So, Bernard, how long have you been running?
I have been running for a pretty long time. So it actually all started in high school,
Mhm.
where I was a very sporty guy. Like I love to throw around a football, play basketball, and all that good stuff, do some wrestling. So in high school, I wasn't actually allowed to join the football team or the basketball team because it was a liability with my visual impairment, which I will get into a little later.
Well, actually, let's
And,
talk about that now. So, the people watching actually have a good idea of that part of your background. So, you
okay, no
have
problem.
a specific disability that hopefully you can maybe talk a little bit about, more to the people watching. So, retinitis pigmentosa, is that correct?
You got it. You got
Okay.
it.
I always worry about not pronouncing that correctly. So, tell us about what that is for you.
Okay, so retinitis pigmentosa is a progressive eye disease that affects the cones and rods in your eyes. So as a kid, it begins with affecting like night vision, and then from there it starts affecting your peripheral vision, and then as you get older, it starts affecting your central vision.
Okay.
So even with myself right now at this time, I have no peripheral vision, and I do have trouble at night, and then my central vision is really like spotty. So I know recently I've been told that I am developing a little bit of a cataract, but not so much to affect my eyes, but all that put together. So I was diagnosed this at 2 years old.
Okay.
Yeah. And even I am really, I tell a lot of people that I am really lucky because even with my eye disease, it is progressive. And I'm not too sure what age exactly, but when I was younger, I was actually told I was supposed to be fully blind. I think around like they told me in my teens, I'd
Okay.
go fully blind. So yeah, I still have vision. I'm still able to see. I'm still able to use my central vision. So I'm very blessed in that regards.
So, how old are you now, Bernard?
I am 32, going to turn 33 soon.
So you were told when that you should have, well, I guess in previous cases of individuals who had this disability, you should have been blind by the time you were a teen.
Yes.
Wow,
So
that's great. And so right now, and just trying to understand this. So you have no all you have no peripheral, right?
I have no peripheral. So in my right eye, like there's no peripheral. On my left eye, it's a little worse than my right eye. So no peripheral vision.
So it's kind of like a tunnel vision of sorts, right?
Exactly. So uh, for people with full vision, just to kind of give you a perspective of what I see, it's almost like getting like a cardboard box and pinning, like getting, I don't know, the size of a pen and poking it through.
Mhm.
and looking through that cardboard box. Like that's as much vision what I'm looking through. Maybe a little bigger, but almost around that size.
So, are you legally blind then? Like,
Yes,
yeah, okay.
I'm considered like legally blind.
Wow. Okay. So then let's tie this back into when you were in school and you were playing sports again.
Exactly. So, as I was saying, when I was in school, and at that time, I did have more vision than I have now. So it wouldn't be as noticeable. Like, so for myself, if I'm on the playground, I could shoot a basketball and like locate it going in. If someone was throwing me a football, I could like locate it with the vision I had, but I was still legally blind though. So I remember just always wanting to be like, I want to be on the football team. I want to be one of the guys. Or I
Mhm.
want to be on the basketball team, or I want to play rugby, and just always being told like, no, you can't. It's like too much of a liability with a visual impairment because if you get hit, you're not seeing the hit come. Or if you're playing basketball, can you see the pass coming towards you? And
Right.
for the other team, they wouldn't be aware of it. So it was way too much of a liability. So I, at the time, I got involved with two things that I began to just love. So one of it was weight training.
Mhm.
I loved just going to the gym and getting those gains, heavy weights. So
Right. Right.
I love that. And then the second love I started developing, I was like, let me join the track team. And someone suggested that because I know during gym class, when we were doing the mile, I would always do well in the mile. So I was like, okay, let me join the track team. And I remember joining the track team, and since it's such an individual sport, where it's just like you in the track, I I was like, okay, this is my thing. And the funny thing about joining the track team, everybody wants to hear the story that, oh, I ran and I was amazing. I was horrendous. I was really, I was so bad. I 100 meters, I would get smoked by like the other runners. I was just so bad and like really slow. But from there, I started learning that I was better at long distances.
Okay.
So that was more my thing. I like the 400s. I like the 800s. I didn't have an opportunity to do it,
Mm.
but every time I ran, I would like always do long distance. And I was like, yeah, I got the endurance. I don't have the power. So from there, that's where it was born, my love of running. And I just kind of kept it up.
When you joined the track team, was there any concern about liability?
No, not at all. Actually, they encouraged it. I remember one of the track and field coaches was a teacher in the resource room where I would go sometimes. So she would always see me and she would encourage me, come to practice. You're gonna get better. Even although I was horrendous and I wasn't good, I did improve from when I started in grade 11 to grade 12. So
Yeah.
she really encouraged me to keep running. Like, yes, no one second guessed me on the track, and the gym teachers were even like, go to track and field, go to track and field. You excel in a sport like that for sure.
What was the teacher's name? Maybe she'll be watching.
Miss Celestini, I think.
Celestine. well,
Yeah,
well, thank you, Ms. Celestine, then, eh?
yeah, I have a horrible memory. Like, high school was so long ago, but she was really awesome to encourage me to keep going in track and kind of be progressive with it.
Awesome. So, there still must have been some barriers to how you were running. How, like, what were some of those barriers that you faced, and how did you overcome those?
So as I got older and obviously graduated from high school, or even during high school, I would go for runs to like practice and get better. And at the time, I was able to just throw on my running shoes, open the door, and say, I'm going for like a 10K run. And it was no problem at all. It was okay. Like with the vision I had, I was able to easily locate people and pass people and all that good stuff. So as I got older, my vision started progressively getting worse. And that's where like I noticed that maybe it's not a good idea to run alone necessarily, or at least when I did run alone, find an area where wasn't that many people.
Right.
So I think I started realizing I had to kind of utilize different ways when I started racing and doing races. So I remember doing my first race was actually so funny because you know how people start small when they start doing races, right?
Right.
So here's me. My first race was a 10K.
Wow. Didn't even do a
So
5K, right to the 10K.
go for the gusto, right? So first race was 10K, and I remember I made it through, but it was just so overwhelming. It was
Now, were you
so
running by yourself or did you have support?
I was running by myself.
Wow. Okay. And then at this point, when you're doing the 10K, how was your vision? Was it still, good enough that I mean, I guess because you finished it, you were able to get through it okay. But were you concerned at all about the whole, while you were running? Like, was there a lot of people running as well?
Yeah, so it was the Oakville Nutrition Marathon, and this was in
Oh,
2015.
the 10K. Okay.
The 10K, yeah. So pretty much like I find that you have a mixture of nervousness of the race, first of all.
Right.
And then for my case, it's nervousness that, oh my gosh, I don't want to bump into someone. I don't want to trip and fall. I don't want to crotch myself on something.
Right. Right. And that's understandable. I mean, did that happen? Did any of that happen?
And Noah, actually, it I made it through, but it was a lot of like, yeah, it was a lot of other barriers, like
Sure.
almost tripping over a pylon. And
Right.
I think I went the wrong way at one point. It's
What?
just like, go ahead.
Sorry, I see in different races, I've seen, individuals who are identified by their, they have a sign that says visually impaired.
Yeah.
Did you wear something that said visually impaired or no?
I did not wear something. I just went for it, and I was like, I'm a regular racer, right? Because
Good for
at that
you.
time, I had like enough vision to kind of get by. So, like I
Right.
said, I remember tripping over a pylon. I think I dropped my MP3 player, and I was like, "Where is it? Where is it?"
Did you find
And
it?
someone behind me see me struggle looking for it, and came and helped give it to me, and it was just
That's awesome.
honestly, it was pretty bad. Like it was just so much things happening and just overwhelming. I finished the race. I did a okay time, and it was just like, okay, I think I was just happy that I finished my first race.
Yeah.
But looking back at it, I'm like, yo, man, you're brave. You're either brave or stupid because wow, like to to have all those things going on, and it was just so wow, I was surprised I finished the race. So that was so many barriers. And
Was the course easy to follow?
no, it was complicated. Like it was go down here, you had to turn because it was amalgamated with both the 21K and the 42K.
Oh, okay, okay.
It was certain places that I was supposed to turn that I'm not supposed to go because that's for the full race.
Hmm.
And just kind of not knowing, and you had the what do they call those individuals who like point you to the right direction?
Oh,
Like,
it's like the volunteers and the volunteer race people. They're just guiding you. Is that what you're talking about?
yeah,
Yeah.
so the volunteer race people, so they're like, oh, they're obviously pointing this way, this way. I'm like, what way? like, like even with my vision, having retinitis pigmentosa, especially at that point where I did have pretty okay vision, you only can really focus on one thing at a time.
Right.
And that's what people kind of don't understand. I may have vision, but if it's supposedly two people within 4 feet of each other, I only can see one person.
Right.
And it's almost like take your choice, pick your poison. who do you want to see and who do you not want to see, you know?
So, even those runners without a disability, they're going through a lot during a race, thinking almost every step of the way. And then here you are running a 10K. Not only is it your first time, not only is it you have this disability, but your mind must have been going crazy trying to really, ensure that everything was going well during that race.
Yeah, it honestly, it was very overwhelming. And something that I actually forgot to even tell you, I did it with a friend. So I started off with a friend, but
Mm.
then they weren't really at my pace. So,
So you just took off.
so I just took off, and that's just, yeah, that's,
So
that's kind
when
of the
when
beginning.
when actually so when you took off,
Yeah.
were you even more concerned at that point, or were you just thinking, you know what, I can do this?
I was thinking like, no, I could do this. I feel good. Like I could do this. And the one thing I find about running, and I don't know if it's all in my head or it's like kind of like a placebo effect, but when I start running, I feel like my eyes clear up a little bit. Maybe
Wow.
it's from, yeah, maybe it's from all like the blood flow and kind of the adrenaline. But I find that things get a little bit more clearer.
Wow, that's really interesting. And then does this happen every time you run?
Most times when I run. So even nowadays, for the vision I have when I'm running, it just kind of gets a little bit clearer. And
Mm.
like I said, my theory on that is I think it's just because the blood flow and like the blood's moving and everything's flowing well and all that. So it's not like 100% where I'm like, oh, I could see amazing, but it just gets a little bit clearer.
When you cross that finish line, considering again, first race, your disability, how did you feel accomplishing that?
At the first time crossing, I feel like it was in like stages. So when I first crossed, I was like, thank goodness I crossed. Like, thank goodness it's over because it was overwhelming. I'm not gonna lie, it was very overwhelming. But then after, like, my brother was actually running the, I think, marathon. So after kind of seeing him and then that friend I ran with as well, after she came from the finishing line, it was kind of like, oh, this is kind of cool. And getting this medal, like, this is really awesome, right?
So you got hooked then.
Yeah, well, you know what? We will definitely go further into the story, but it was a really good feeling. I was very proud of myself for sure.
And so, it progressed. And now I'm also showing a picture behind me of when you completed your half marathon.
Yes.
So talk about that
So
story.
that one, where was that one? I think
That was Oakville too, I believe, right?
that was Oakville. So, you know what? I got the dates wrong actually. My 10K was in 2013,
Okay.
and then my 21K marathon, that was 2015. There we go. Now
Okay.
it all makes
Okay.
sense. I I think because it was both like the Oakville like nutrition marathon.
Yep.
So yeah, like 2013, my eyes were way better than 2015. So if you kind of jumped from 2013 to 2015 when I did my marathon, it was so much learning. So even I started, I remember starting to run with a running group at work when I
Okay.
first started at agency. And we had a running group. And since 2013, I didn't do a race. Like I think I just kind of stopped after and I was just running for fun, right? Just
Right.
going on runs with my brother and just kind of running around the neighborhood, right? So I think deep down, as proud as I was in 2013 to complete that 10K, I was kind of like, no, I don't know. I want to go through that whole overwhelming nature again, right? So I remember working or starting a new job, and they had a running group, and getting involved in the running group, and everybody was just so involved. and going on runs with them. And then everybody's talking about like races, right? So I'm like, okay, you know what? I think my first race coming back was either the Tim Hortons run. I think it was the Tim Hortons run. And this was in 2015, I'm going to say.
A 5K?
Yeah. So this was in June of 2015. And I remember it being just like this really big trail. And I was running by myself once again, this really big trail. And I did okay. It was okay. It wasn't as like overwhelming, but I think just running with that running group at work, like I just felt kind of better. I felt a little bit more comfortable, but I wasn't getting the time that I feel like my speed deserved, because there was so many distractions with avoiding this person, avoiding this person, avoiding this person. Oh, it's a turn. Oh, shaded area. My eyes have to adjust. Oh, this, right? So it wasn't the greatest run. It was okay. So
well, based on what I saw about your stuff in your race, that Tim Hortons race, you finished around 24 minutes.
No, what? And actually, I will actually come to that, because that was the first Tim Hortons run. I did it 2 years.
Okay.
So that was the first one. I did okay. And I remember another race coming, and it was the Alzheimer's race in Mississauga.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think you were there.
Yes, I do remember seeing you there. And actually, you actually finished, I think, one of the top runners that run, right?
Yeah, and this was the first one. So it was the first, and then I did it, I think, 2 more years in a row. So the first time I did it, I remember really struggling, because I didn't, and actually, as someone that I worked with named Willa, I remember running with her, or she wasn't even supposed to be my guide, but I remember just being like, okay, I'm going to follow you. Is that okay, right? And getting through the race, right? It was a lot of obstacles. There was a lot of turns. You have to go through these barriers and all this, and so much going on. So I remember running with her and doing okay and just kind of getting by. And then I remember after that, working in the office, and Willa coming to me, she's like, do you know that there's organizations that you could actually get guides to run with you, just like what I did with you? Like, I don't mind doing it, but there's actually organizations that have guides. So I looked into it. It was an organization called Achilles Canada.
Okay.
And Brian McLean is the top guy that you speak to. And I was telling him, I'm interested in running. I would love a guide for races, because I love doing races, but I just kind of feel like a guide would be a good opportunity for me. He hooked me up with such an amazing person. He hooked me up with someone named Natalia. And I remember we spoke, and we're like, okay, you know what? Let's do a practice run, right? We did one practice run together where she was guide. She would run in front of me and tell me, oh, look, dude, watch out for your left. Watch out for your right. We're coming up to this. Da-da-da. And at the same time, not even just be my guide, kind of like coach me to, okay, maybe you should speed up, right? So one practice race, and then following that, I think it was like a few days later, it was the Canada Day race in Burlington, 5K. And I remember running with Natalia, and we were running, and she even made me like the visual impaired symbol to let people know. And we were just running. She was like, to your left, boom. Like I'd run, I'd speed up. This person's to your right, watch out for this. And we were like it was a team. It was insane, like just how easy having extra eyes were. Right. So we're running, and it's something that I have to stop doing. I actually, at the end of the race, I blew past her again. So you're gonna see a trend in the stories I tell. Like by the end of a race, I'm always blowing past my guide, which yeah.
Well, they say finish strong, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So it's funny because that race, it was the easiest race. I had my best time I ever had. Incredible time. So let me revisit the Alzheimer's run, second year of doing it.
Mm.
And I remember just having a crazy time, like out of this world time in the Alzheimer's run.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just killing it with Nat and just like doing so well. And it's funny because you mentioned the fact that, and I feel like I'm skipping the marathon, but I'll come
That's
back
okay.
to
That's
that.
okay.
You mentioned how I did really well
Yeah.
in that race. So I did really well, and I remember there was someone in my age group who did better, and I was like, I was probably a few seconds from being first in my age group. So I was like, oh man, that's done. But you know what? I did so well, and I overcame that same race that I struggled so much with last year,
Right.
and just blew it out of the water. And it was a little bit of some hiccups. I know I I made a wrong turn and think it was a tree or something. But you know what?
And how did you finish? Like, what was your time for that 5K?
I can't remember, but it was really good. I think it was under like 24 minutes, 23 something. I can't remember. 20 something two. I can't remember, but it was really good. It was
Well, if
probably,
it's good enough that you got to the podium, got an extra medal out of it.
yeah. But even that was actually the year after where I overcame that and I got to the podium and got that first place. So that was like
Awesome.
22, 20 something. So that was pretty awesome. And I feel like I'm jumping from one race, but to answer yourself with the barriers overcame,
Mm.
having that guide in Natalia, it just made me a supreme runner. It just made me so much better and made me so confident. And it took away that angst that yeah, I had that extra angst that I didn't need as a runner.
Right. Right.
So it was incredible. So to jump to the half a marathon, one of the proudest days of my life. And I remember just training over the summer for that because I think it was in October that race was. And I actually had two guides that day. So Mario and Natalia, and Mario's Natalia's running friend. And it was it was a 21K. I remember it was my first 21K, and I was saying to Natalia, I'm gonna get under 2 hours, and she's like, you don't want to put too much pressure on your first race. Just do it, get it over with, and then you could see from next time. So I remember running the 21K. I feel like the first like 5K, not even first 5K, like first 3K, getting a cramp in my like leg already. I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't know if I could finish this. And I remember kind of tripping over a pylon a little bit, but
Right.
catching myself before I tripped, and Natalia being like, oh, you're like Spider-Man. Oh my goodness. And running that race and just getting pushed by Natalia and Mario to like keep going. Let's do this. Stop. Don't give up, and all this stuff, and just running and following them. They were awesome guides pointing out, watch out for this, watch out for that. And I remember getting 2 hours on the dot for my 21K.
Wow. That's great.
Two
That is
hours.
great. And so you did exactly what you said you were going to do.
Exactly. And a special thing about that day, I feel, and I don't know if I'm over exaggerating, but one of the greatest days of my life because I remember my parents actually coming to the race
Oh,
and at the finishing line and just like being like, yeah, cheering me on and all that stuff. And like, honestly, that was the first time my parents ever came to a race
right.
and just like finishing a 21K. And it took so much out of me. I remember they're like, you got to eat something. I was like, no. They're handing me a bag. I'm like, no, leave me alone. And I'm trying to sit down, and they're like, no, you can't sit down. I'm like, no, leave me alone. I'm tired.
they must have been so proud as you crossed that finish line.
Mm-hmm.
Wow,
Mm.
that's awesome. You know what? Talk about a great thing to have your family there with all, the barriers you face, and you found different ways to really overcome those barriers, and then even look for, support. And so, but, how does, someone with a similar disability, find support like what you had?
I think the most important thing is to not put yourself in a box, to not tell yourself that you can't do something, because it's always a way. Like, no matter the barrier, I believe there's always a way. Maybe it's not traditional, maybe it's unconventional, but there's always a way. Because there was one point where I didn't want to run anymore, right? I
Mm.
didn't want to do races because I was afraid that I would hurt myself at a race. I was afraid that I'd bump into something. I was afraid that I'd bump into someone else and affect someone else's time, right?
Right.
But I remember that day where Willa mentioned a guide runner. Even at the back of my head, I was saying to myself, I don't really want to run with someone, because is that truly being a runner if someone's like running with you?
Mm-hmm.
And just those conceptions
Yeah.
of, yeah, of like something that you don't know the facts to, you haven't been involved with, and you're creating those conceptions. So it's so important to at least at least try it out. If you don't like it, you don't like it, right?
And so how do you change the perception of someone who is visually impaired? Like, can you talk about some of the self-talk that you gave yourself to really push through even wanting to try these things?
I told myself, like, self-talk is, I have this like theory that we all like to think we're experts of the future. So we all like to tell ourselves, if I do A plus B, C will happen, when you don't get the full facts.
Right.
So even applying this to working out, if you look at it in a negative perspective, oh, like, if I A go to the gym and then plus B work out equals C, I'm just going to be really tired and there's going to be no results. So where are you getting that mindset? Like, where are you getting the facts from? There's no facts attached to it. So let's race the answer to that question. A, if I go to a gym, plus B, if I work out, equals C, I'm going to get results. And then try it out, see if it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But why are we making these perceptions and these self-talks with no evidence? So even for myself with running, if I did not get a guide and I just stopped running, I didn't know the answers to what I can become. Let me
Right.
try it out. Let me see if I enjoy it. If I enjoy it, yes. If I don't, walk away. At least I tried, right? So I feel that it's so important for even any sports that a person with a visual impairment wants to get into, or a person with a disability, or even just a so-called able-bodied person wants
Mhm.
to get in. Just try it out. If you don't like it, you don't like it. But the fact that you tried it out, you could find a new love.
So I know that you're a huge advocate for those individuals with a visual impairment, and you're actually a CNIB ambassador, correct?
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about what you do and what does that entail?
So I've been a CNIB ambassador for a while, for a really long time, since I was in college.
Wow.
And it it's just going around and just letting the public know about redefining visually impaired people and educating the general public and businesses. So actually the CNIB is now doing advocacy, and I'm an advocate as well.
Right.
And for the ambassador side, I'm sharing my experiences as a visually impaired individual. So I'm sharing like how it was growing up as a visually impaired person. And I'm sharing how it is for gaining employment, and my story about going to school, my story about being active, and my story about how I am, I do music as well. So just that life story and incorporating the CNIB as well, and how much they helped me
Right.
growing up as a young person to who I am now. And then I'm lucky enough to be part of the advocate side of it, where I could advocate for policy changes when it does come for visual impaired individuals, when it does come for like funding with programs, when it does come from that macro eye of what visually impaired people are looked at as. And I feel that both of these positions are very important, because deep down, I feel that the perceptions made about visually impaired people and just people with disabilities as a whole, it's so false,
Mm-hmm.
because it's these perceptions that we stay home in our houses and we don't have social lives, and
Right.
we don't get involved with sports because we can, and we don't have to deal with real life issues, which is such a fallacies. And I think that people have to actually have an opportunity to get to see a visually impaired person at work, because I feel like if you do, you'll be able to kill those misinterpretations.
So you talk about perceptions, and you talk about your advocacy with CNIB. I
Yeah.
recently watched a video where you talked about intersectionality. So
Mm-hmm.
can you talk a little bit more about that?
Oh, definitely. Uh, Definitely with intersectionality,
Mhm.
it is so important. And I feel that I am so happy to live in this day and age where we could talk about intersectionality. Because even for myself, when I was growing up, it was constantly, I'm either visually impaired, or I'm either, as for those who can't see, I'm a dark-skinned black male. So it was either, are you blind or are you black? And the problems of being blind would only just be in this box, and the problems of being, or the barriers of being black would be in this box.
Right.
And you can never mix it. It wasn't allowed to mix. There were just different substances that had to stay in one spot. So even as a black male with a visual impairment, the issues of maybe being discriminated for for example, maybe walking into a store, and because my vision, my eye veers to the left or veers to the right, people thinking that, yo, this guy's suspicious, right? And not having that consideration that maybe possibly that he can be visually impaired, maybe possibly he could live with a disability, but
Right.
instantly, because the dark skin, it's almost being felt that he's a threat because he's black, and not considering that a black person could have a disability. It's not out of this world. And then when you look at it from the other side, being visually impaired, when people look at visual impairment, they think you don't deal with race. That's not something you think of. Discrimination, you're only thinking about discrimination when it comes to your disability. But I think it's very important to understand that it's a mixture.
Right.
It's two. Yeah, it's like a mixture of, what if I'm a visually impaired person and I get on a bus and I have a cane, and the person doesn't believe I'm visually impaired and won't let me on the bus? What if that circumstance happens?
Right.
So
Right.
to go to institutions that help blind people or visually impaired people and address this, they sometimes don't know how to address something like this, because they're only thinking of, oh, I only deal with visually impaired problems, or or problems pertaining to blind people. I don't know how to deal with this. Maybe you just have to do it a different way. But when you have intersectionality and trained with that intersectional scope, you will understand that, oh, that was not right. And what can I express to this person to have a discussion that what happened wasn't right. They should have never rejected you or did this because of your color and your visual impairment. Let's see what we can change instead of, oh, well, next time have your card close by, or next time you just have to advocate for yourself, or just take the next but. Like, no, you have to incorporate a person's kind of what that person represents on both sides of it. And
Right.
also, I mentioned in the video that it's not my experiences as a visually impaired Black male would be a different experience as a visually impaired white male or white female or Black female. And I guess we just have to know how to talk about how we should be represented in the perspectives that we have as well.
So in the video, actually, you talk about how some of the comments that have come your way, you know, some jokes about Stevie Wonder, silly things like that. And it's, you know, I can imagine it must, you know, at some point become, you know, too much for you, right?
Yeah, and it's people don't understand that, like, microaggressions, they say that when you're exposed to multiple, one microaggression or one little joke is nothing, right?
Mm.
But when you're exposed to that daily and a lot, it starts to affect your psyche and the way you think. So maybe if someone makes a blind joke or a Black joke, you get that from that person. They're like, oh, I just made one in a day to Ben, right? Or Bernard. But then you don't know that that person's dealing for another 10 that same day.
Right.
And
Right.
is constantly just like, haha, oh, great. Oh, nice. Oh, nice. Okay. Okay. And just constantly just hearing all that's going on. And even with myself as an advocate and as an ambassador, I love discussion. I love people's true thoughts and having a discussion because I feel that's a learning process.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes down to having those perceptions and stereotypes, and even, for example, like, I never knew Black people could be blind. Like, why? Like, why do you
Someone
have
has
that?
said that to you?
Oh, I heard things like that and like insinuations, right? And it's almost like you have to, it has to be understood that a disability could happen to anybody.
Right.
And it's not like color based, it has nothing to do with color. And I think it should be understood that these questions, like, it's okay to ask. No problem, no problem. But to surround yourself in those biases and those misconceptions, it's just, yeah,
It does no one
really,
good, right? To keep
yeah.
those misconceptions there. So, and I understand too that you're also an ambassador for Fighting Blindness Canada.
Oh, yes, I am. So Fighting Blindness Canada, yes. I feel like I'm ambassador of like just
Well,
a
I mean,
bunch of,
it really speaks to, you know, how you've taken your, you know, visual impairment and done great things with that, right? And so, what do you do for Fighting Blindness Canada?
so with Fighting Blindness Canada, what I do is get articles published on myself. I'm part of, or I was part of the Young Leaders program, and now I'm getting into actually a mentorship program where I take a young visually impaired person and I become their mentor and help them navigate through these crazy shark-filled waters of life. So
There's a lot of sharks out there, that's for sure.
exactly. I'm an okay runner. I don't know about swimmer though. So yeah,
That's
so
pretty cool. That's a really great thing that you're doing, to be able to mentor those individuals. It actually kind of ties into your current job. Actually, why don't you tell everybody what you currently do?
So I'm currently at work at a blind school in Brantford, and I am currently a student support counselor. So I have the honor of working with visually impaired, blind, and deafblind kids. And it honestly, once again, another thing that is life changing. So it, I remember first starting at the school, and my perception of visual impairment, like I was a proud person, but most of my perceptions were myself because I didn't know too many visually impaired or blind people prior. And just working at the school, the amount of learning that I have done over the school and just learning about so many different other people and and just going through the barriers that I went through life of that visual impairment, of being insecure about my visual impairment, of having times where I just never thought I was good enough or I never thought I could fit in. And also incorporating those triumphs of making it through school, of like going to university, of going to a different city to do university, of employment, all that amalgamated and all that came to head when I started working at the school because I realized that with these young people, I was able to give and I was able to share my experiences and I was able to support the young people with visual impairments and able to let them know that I was once an insecure teenager who had a visual impairment who would never tell anybody because I was afraid that people would judge me and I was afraid that I'd be less than others and constantly made fun of. And even going back to intersectionality, I was afraid I wasn't Black enough because I had a visual impairment. So
Wow.
yeah, so just to give my experiences and these students at the school able to pick my brain and able to not even just be that mentor or that that person that they look up to, have fun with them, to crack jokes with them, to veer away from society and normalize visual impairment because
Right.
society sometimes doesn't normalize it and just let people be themselves, right?
As a support counselor, what's the age group of the youth that you're working with?
So I'm working with high school students.
High school
So
students.
like
I
14.
I have to say I find it so commendable that you're, helping individuals with visual impairments, but also taking it as a learning for yourself. And as you talked about, the perceptions before were really just about you, but now you're seeing how these, high school students are really perceiving themselves, and it's teaching you something as well.
Yeah, it
Amazing,
is.
amazing. Bernard, what like when you talk about adversity, what are some things that you can do to overcome those mental challenges?
I say just put your nose to the grindstone. Just start swinging, and then you will, or swinging, but knowing where you're swinging, and you will connect for sure. Because I think a lot of perceptions is why bother, right?
Right.
Who's watching me? Who's like no one's even watching me. No one cares what I'm doing. But I feel that when you start putting your heart into things and working hard and being passionate of what you do, it's noticed. People around you notice. And when people notice, it leads up to other opportunities. So even for example, with that intersectionality video, I was kind of second guessing putting it up because I was like, no one's gonna care about it. I'll put it up, whatever, right? But I was like, no what? I'll put it up because it's a good message, right? And look where that led me. That led me to talking with yourself after you saw that video. And I almost feel like from talking to you about running and adversities and triumph, I feel like that will lead to something else where I could share my story as well. So
Well, hopefully, I mean, and this is why we do conversations like this, right? To make sure that people out there, not just the running community, but people out there really see inspiring individuals like yourself and say, you know, how can we potentially work with Bernard or even hear Bernard's story or share Bernard's story? Because I think there's, you know, as you stated, there's a lot of individuals out there with similar visual impairments, you know, that, you know, think they're alone, right?
yeah.
And so it's a great message. It's a great message. Bernard, when we before we end every Runversation, we do a quick, you know, ask the guests questions, and if you're up for it, I'd like to do it with you, and then we can see what those answers are. Okay.
And let's do this. I'm ready.
All right. So Bernard, who's a runner you'd love to meet, past or present?
I would love to meet Usain Bolt.
Usain Bolt, right? I mean, he's a fast runner.
Exactly. Unlike me.
Well, from the
Exactly.
times that you're talking about, you sound like a fast runner too. So,
Yeah, at least in 100 meters, I'm not the greatest.
what's the scariest moment you've had running a race?
Uh, not being fully trained before. So not training before and just going into it running.
Right. What's your most favorite accomplishment? I think we talked about it before. Is the half marathon your favorite accomplishment?
I would say yes. And the reason why is not just because it was a marathon,
Mm,
as mentioned before, because my parents were there. That's
right.
that's my
They
favorite.
must have been really proud of you. And they must be proud of you for the things that you're doing right now, the advocacy, the ambassador, the support counseling for youth. It's amazing. Who inspires you to run?
You know what? I'm gonna go with the mushy gushy answer. I'd say you. You inspired me.
Me?
Yeah, you
Oh,
inspired me
thank
to
you. Thank
got
you.
me back into
I'm
it.
sure there's other people that inspire you, but I appreciate you saying that. So, is there a bucket list race that you want to do?
I'm full marathon, baby.
Yeah.
That's full marathon. It's on my bucket list. It's been on my bucket list for years. That's happening. I don't
It
care
doesn't
what
matter
anybody.
where, just a full marathon.
Just a full marathon doesn't matter where. I could be running it on the beaches of Jamaica. I could be running it in Alaska. I could even be running it down the road. I will do a full marathon, guaranteed. Take it to the bank.
Well, if you ever do register for a marathon, just let us know, and maybe one day you could do it with the Niagara Falls Marathon.
I would be 100% down.
2 words to describe your passion for running.
2 words. Uh, 2 words, separate words or at the same time used together?
It's up to you.
Okay, Noah, I would say my Zen place.
Your Zen place. That's awesome. And it's interesting you say that too, because you said, you know, when you race, you almost feel like your vision's clear,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's interesting. Interesting. What advice would you give to those with a disability who want to run?
Just do it. We're not gonna get sued by Nike, right?
And we're not going to get sued by Nike.
Okay, Noah, I add on to just do it right now. That's Noah. If you have a dream, like I know this is so corny, but if you have a dream, just stop putting these perceptions of why your dream won't work and why you can't do it, and replace why with I will.
Amazing. Amazing. Bernard, what's up next for you?
So Noah, I am getting actually back into running. So just I ran a little bit on Thursday, and I want to get back into weight training. So definitely, my goal is to train for a marathon. It has to happen, and yeah, so definitely a lot of running and getting back into it, and yeah.
That's awesome. And you know what? I totally believe that you can do this.
Thank you, thank you.
Bernard, I appreciate you joining us today. It was really inspiring to hear your story. It's really inspiring to hear how you're sharing your experiences with all these different individuals. And I just want to say thank you for joining us today.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me. And like I said, to anybody who is reaching for the stars, go beyond, reach for planets. Keep doing what you got to do.
Awesome. Thanks, Bernard. And thanks everyone for joining us today. Take care.